The following is a presentation of Geekster Media.
Remember that show back then? Remember that show? Turn on the TV, time was always flying. Why did they have to end? So many shows you forgotten. Now that we've got a podcast, we can release all the shows from our hands. Yeah, will you be the most TV dudes you'll ever listen to? As long as we keep on talking sitcoms and cartoons from back in the day. Okay, we confess we're obsessed, but we got a podcast to help you remember that show. Hey there, TV lovers, and welcome to episode 20 of Remember That Show, the podcast where we explore the obscure or forgotten TV shows of the 80s and 90s. I'm Adam Pope.
And I'm William Bruce West. This time around, we're going to be examining a musical kids show from the 80s that had an interesting 9-season journey going from syndication to cable TV on the Disney Channel. But first, we have to look back at our own TV-obsessed childhoods in a segment we call Theme Song.
Speaking personally, Will, our show today, it's one that I literally dreamed of being on as a kid. Like, it's one of the few vivid dream memories I have from my childhood that aren't like nightmares, you know? It's like the good dream that I hold on to is that sleepy time fantasy of myself dancing and singing on stage with the stars of this show. But I gotta ask you this, what 80s or 90s TV show did you dream of being a part of? Either as a cast member or an in-universe character, with the understanding that you've already said head of the classes where you felt you fit, but where did you just, I wish I was part of this thing?
This is going to be very strange and it's going to be very meta. So hopefully you can go on this journey with me. But like, it was never a show. I never dreamt of being on any particular show. Like, I felt like I could fit in, like, pretty much anywhere. My dream, like you said, this was your dream. My dream was to be part of a network family. And by that, I mean, like, they don't do it as much these days because networks aren't really like a strong thing. But like, if you go back to, let's say, the mid to late 90s, when networks made it seem like everyone was one big family and they were having fun. They would do these like promos for the new season. The one that always comes to mind that is really what this is centered around is the WB, because the WB had the back lot. And it was that whole thing of like, you never knew who you'd run into on the back lot. You could be like walking around and, hey, it's T and Tamara. Oh, hey, it's the Camden kids. I loved that. There was something about that where it was like, wow, it's just one big family. That's why, like, my favorite part of Ocean's 11 is the poker game, because it's all the stars of like the WB at the time or Warner Brothers Productions, and you're just like, I bet they really do get together and play poker. It was my dream to do like a Saturday morning preview show. You know, because like back in the day, like the TGIF kids used to take turns doing it every year, you know? That's what I wanted. So it was never like, oh, I want to be the Bull's little brother on Night Court or anything like that. I wanted to be a part of a network family.
That is wild. That is interesting. That actually makes me think of somewhat. I've been meaning to ask you about this just to know, have you ever watched the Danny DeVito TV movie, The Ratings Game?
No, but I own it.
Really?
It got a physical release. Like, I bought that fairly recently. I haven't put it on the shelf yet, but like, I've never seen it. I've heard of it, but it was one of those things of like, I love Danny DeVito, like 80s movies, like Applause and things like that. Like, he just kind of stopped, it seemed like, after Matilda. He was like, this Sunny in Philadelphia money's sweeter. So like, yeah, no, I definitely bought it, but I haven't seen it.
We're gonna have to do a very special episode talking about that, because that's like the William Bruce West world defined, okay. I feel like. But
Okay.
I got to tell you, for me, what's interesting is I said Kids Incorporated was like the dream. But when I think about like what is the universe that I could have been a part of and it would have worked, this is going to be very close to home for you. My answer is Power Rangers, because I was 11 when the show debuted. So that was the tail end of their target demographic, right? But I was all in for those first 3 years, basically until I started high school. But in sixth grade, I crafted my own power morpher from cardboard and tinfoil. I made individual power coins. I wore it on my belt buckle under long shirts so nobody could see it. Just in case a monster attacked the school, I was going to be called into action. Like Angel Grove, to me, it just felt very familiar because they filmed the show in Southern California, right? So that's where I grew up. I was like, I could have easily been selected by Zordon. I could have at least been a reserve Power Ranger. Come on. But you never imagined being a Ranger yourself?
No, I was realistic. Like I was just like, I'm fat and like I wasn't passing those president's physical fitness exams. And like I think that was like a prerequisite for Zordon for you to be on his radar. But I mean, I was the same as you. I made my own morpher. My mom was going through the change and they had given her like birth control pills or something for it. And the container was shaped like a morpher, so I busted out my acrylic paint and painted it white and made my own like Green Ranger power coin and glued it on her. And I remember she was like, "Don't tell people where you got that from," But it was like I had my own morpher too, because the morpher is one of the hardest things to find from that toy line. So like I eventually got one, but I still have that birth control morpher somewhere.
That's awesome.
I had the dreams, but I knew that like Bulk and Skull probably had a better shot than I did of getting on that team.
I think I was just a little bit more delusional than you because I had the same body type. But I do have to mention also, I've already talked about it on a previous episode, but I did technically get to live my Kids Incorporated dream by appearing on the kids lip sync TV game show, The Great Pretenders, in the late 90s, which was hosted by two original members of Kids Incorporated. So I got my fix. That life dream did come true to a certain extent.
Well, our show today has an iconic theme song, and our friends over on the After Lunch podcast have been on a year-long journey of Sweet 16 tournaments to determine the ultimate TV theme song. But since we don't have that luxury, Adam, what do you think is the catchiest 80s TV theme song?
Oh, there's a reason they're going through this whole tournament and get people to vote and all of that. But I think there's a difference between like an earworm that just sticks in your brain and then like a catchy tune with a great hook. And that's what I'm looking for. If I have to choose a theme that just delights me from moment one, it ends with my heart soaring, it has levels in between, it's the Perfect Strangers theme song, the short version, not the full version. Just that's the perfect amount of time you need for that song to just like grab your attention and get you excited because it builds, it's all positive energy and white guy soul, so. But do you have a pick? Like, can you take a pick? I mean, you're so well versed, but like, where does it fall for you? How can you define it? I mean, that's a long conversation, but.
This one is so hard. Because it's like, what mood are you in that day? What emotion are you trying to evoke? I mean, you had a good pick there. Like, you could pretty much pick most of the, like, let's say Wave 1 TGIF theme songs. But, like, I always gravitate towards the Alan Thicke catalog because it's kind of like he straddled two worlds. Not only did he give us two iconic theme songs, but then he became an iconic TV dad. And so like I gotta give it to the like Different Strokes Facts of Life 1-2 punch. Like it just that's me.
That's awesome. Love it. All right. Well, Will, we got to get into the world as it was on television. It was somehow ripe for this Kids Incorporated phenomenon to be introduced. So we got to find out how it got the green light. The MTV cable network, launched in August of 1981, quickly became a pop culture sensation. It was playing nothing but music videos of the most popular music artists, if you can imagine that. At that time, it was changing the music industry landscape forever because it was no longer enough to sound great. Now you had to look great. You had to create a great video that told a story with unique design, probably some special effects, and throughout the 80s, music videos just seemed to permeate entertainment on every level. Their TV and movies, they changed their editing styles to reflect the MTV look, right? I mean, especially stuff like Miami Vice, was just like very heavily influenced by that. But many directors of the music videos started crossing over into film because that was commercial. That was what was getting people excited. But soon the production went beyond like just simple 3-minute musical fantasies, right? Like in the case of Michael Jackson's video for Thriller, for example, that's like an entire short film. There's a making of short film. It's a full-fledged media event when a music video drops. So every station, I feel like, wanted to cash in on the MTV trend. They were trying to appeal to the youth of the day. And sometimes those productions began starring the kids themselves. So let me ask you this, Will. When it comes to music television, not just MTV, but without cable TV in your youth, what was your first exposure to like music videos? Can you remember even like the first video that really got your attention?
Yes, vividly, because this is one of those situations where I probably should have done the research to like line up dates or whatever, but we'll just let one of our listeners correct me. But like, I remember my cousins came to visit, and it was weird because I think this was like the first time I had met these cousins, and their family was like really like stingy. They had bought Oreos. It was when those like fudge covered Oreos came out, and they were like hiding them in their room so I couldn't have them. But their room was in my house. So it's like, who are you? So anyway, it was when Thriller came out. I don't know if it aired because, like I said, didn't have cable. So there must have been some kind of TV special, or they knew it was coming. And they were like, you got to watch this. It's Michael Jackson. And like, I had like the We Are the World album and things like that, but I wasn't really like into music. I was like 5 or whatever, 4 or 5. So they like made me watch it, and it scared the crap out of me because like that's a lot for a little kid. And I remember I had like nightmares about it. I'm not one of those 80s kids who grew up watching horror. So it's like, I'm sure there are folks laughing right now, but it's like, yeah, Thriller to a 4-year-old in the 80s was scary when he turns into like the Wolfman and all that. So that was my first music video. Like that stuck with me because I remember I was scared and these jerk cousins were laughing that I was scared, But like growing up, my main exposure, and this is very short-lived, but like in the beginning of the TNBC era, there was Saturday morning videos because a lot of people don't realize NBC on like Friday nights had Friday night videos, but it was programmed for like you're coming home from the club. So it was very late for kids. If you watch like the Saturday morning preview that aired the season Saturday morning video started, they acknowledge it. They're like, yeah, there's Friday night videos, but my parents don't let me stay up that late. I think it was Malcolm Jamal Warner who said it. That's like dating it, but it was like every Saturday morning you would get like 3 to 5 music videos. I don't think they were even like ranking them, but like that was my main exposure. Sometimes Entertainment Tonight might show one if it was like a really big artist, but like other than that, until like the pop boy band era, music videos weren't a big part of my life. They just didn't come to basic TV. But how about you?
For me, it was interesting because I think my family got basic cable probably around like 1986, 87, because I have tapes that I recorded Nickelodeon, which was part of that whole Viacom universe, And so I know we had it. We will get into MTV somewhere down the line. We're going to be covering MTV shows. But like, so I remember like Fine Young Cannibals, She Drives Me Crazy, because my friends had cable also, and I remember being at their house and that video came on, and then going in their car and they had the cassette tape. I was like, wait, music videos, but then also the cassette. You guys love Fine Young Cannibals in this family.
They're the ones.
So that was probably my actual first, but the one that really mattered to me was Cherish by Madonna in 1989. That's the one I remember watching like on our TV at home, taping it because it caught my attention. It was shot all in black and white. It's her at a beach. Like it's the most non-scandalous, like video compared to everything else she was doing. She's like all covered up. She's rolling in the waves. She's wet, but that's about it. She's got short blonde hair. It was just kind of a look I wasn't used to. But what got me was there's mer people with fishtails swimming in the ocean. There's a little mer kid that she's dancing with and stuff. And that was just a fascination for me after I rode the submarine ride at Disneyland, being underwater, seeing fake mermaids. And anyway, it was just really interesting. I even asked for the 45 record single of Cherish for Christmas that year. And it was the first like new pop music I ever owned. Like that's the first piece of music on a recorded medium, that I was really attached to. Then years later, I see, oh, there's this lady with a cone bra. Wait, she was in Dick Tracy and that's her, huh? It was so strange for me because I didn't know anything about the scandalous Madonna.
Right. She was gonna blow your mind in a few years.
Yeah.
Well, the singing and dancing child star phenomenon goes all the way back to a 3-year-old Shirley Temple in the 30s singing about being on the good ship Lollipop, soon becoming a box office phenomenon. At this same time, theatrical shorts starring Our Gang, later known as the Little Rascals, showed that groups of children getting into comedic adventures was a viable form of entertainment, and that it was easy enough to switch out the young actors when they outgrew their cuteness. By the 60s, groups like the Jackson 5 and the Osmonds proved that child pop groups could equal big record sales and eventually cross over into television, as a teenage Donnie and Marie Osmond eventually headlined their own popular variety show in the 70s, and the Jackson 5 earned their own animated series. TV had already tried to manufacture its own pop sensation with the Monkees in the 60s, and even the kids from the Brady Bunch had hit singles that premiered on their show when they formed a singing group. So, by the 80s, with pop music being given a visual push, it was just a matter of time before someone tried to distill all these years of kid actors and singing stars into a single program. Adam, do you have a favorite fake band from TV?
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. There are so many from movies that I love that got like soundtrack releases that I just listen to all the time. Talking about Spinal Tap, talking about Josie and the Pussycats, Steel Dragon from the movie Rockstar, like all these groups. But like when it comes to TV bands, I was really racking my brain. Like there's the Zack Attack. I'm not going to say I don't love all the songs in their catalog, but it really is hard not to say the Monkees for me because I was totally obsessed with the reruns of their show that were, playing in the 80s. I was like 5 years old. I'm like going to garage sales with my mom and buying Monkees records and then listening to them at home. I'm learning all the lyrics. I got to meet Mickey Dolenz at a county fair when he was performing with one of those like 60s legacy rock and roll acts. Everybody does their one hit. It got his autograph. So like when I was 8, that was a big deal. But obviously with the Monkees, the fake band line is kind of blurry because I mean they did release legitimate music that played on the radio. They did a lot of albums after their TV show was off the air, but truthfully the Monkees aren't that different from the band that we're talking about today. I mean, both were assembled by producers to perform on a TV show as fictionalized versions of themselves. Both had concert music video sequences that played in between flimsy storylines. Both were a reflection of the musical trends of their era. So yeah, definitely the Monkees are who I always have to go back to. But I'm curious, where do you fall? Who's your favorite fake TV band?
So, like, thinking about it, my first thought was the Monkees. Like, I loved the Monkees. That was an era of syndication where, like, I loved all the theme songs, but, like, it was very important for me to not come into the Monkees late. I needed to see Davy's belt hit the ground because it's the you know what I mean? Like it kicks off the theme song. Like, I have to have that part. It's the opposite of like skip intro on Netflix. Like, I have to see that sequence. But like, if we're really getting down to it, and I mean, this shouldn't come as a surprise, even though I actually kind of forgot about them, California Dreams.
Yeah.
Because California Dreams is basically like Saved by the Bell with singing, but it's earnest. Like they're actually trying to be a band. It's not one of those like, oh, we're a band for an episode. And they have actual songs to the point. There's an actual soundtrack, which is very hard to find. I ended up buying one from Germany. Like that was one of my grail items while thrifting, and then I just gave up. But now I think I have the American one too. It's here somewhere. But there was also a CD, well, a CD set that was only given to cast and crew when the show ended, and it ended up being ripped and posted online. So I have the entire California Dreams discography of like every song performed on the episodes as well as the mastered soundtrack songs. I loved their sound, but I also loved the songwriting. Like, they have a single, Too Much to Dream, and it's a whole play on like had a little too much to dream last night. You know, like for early 90s pop, it's on par with like Wilson Phillips. You know, say what you will about like Wilson Phillips is so much more than Hold On. Like that's what everybody remembers, and that's like the memes and everything. But Wilson Phillips were an incredible harmony group with good songwriting, and I put California Dreams right up there. And one was a nepotism project, and one was a band created for TV, and they're on the same footing.
All right. Well, Will, that's awesome. And yeah, someday we will talk about that show when we're ready, when we're truly ready for it.
We have to earn it.
Yes. But in the meantime, we got to tell you what this show we're here to discuss is all about in our elevator pitch. Kids Incorporated began airing in syndication in 1984 for a single season until the end of 1985. Shortly thereafter, it was picked up by the Disney Channel and began airing new episodes from 1986 to 1994, though technically it ran on the station for a full decade through reruns, finally ending in 1996. And the series revolved around a group of kids ranging from ages 7 to 16 who performed as a musical top 40 act live on stage at a children's music club called The Place, but also would break into song to express their feelings and music video style performances between their concerts. And these story segments usually found the kids dealing with various childhood experiences or just people in their neighborhood, but sometimes there were also like robots and aliens and leprechauns who would show up too. The songs performed by the group in the show were legitimate radio and MTV hits, from the hottest stars of the day, sung by the young members of the group. There were also original songs composed for the series as well. Now, the original cast consisted of Marta Marrero, who later took the stage name of Martika. She played the kind-hearted Gloria, Jerry Sherrill as the flamboyant Mickey, Rasad Patterson, known only as the Kid, who performed, he was kind of like a young Michael Jackson or Billy Ocean. He had a great voice. Then there was Renee Sands, who went by her own name and portrayed the somewhat neurotic older sister of the youngest member, Stacy, played by the spunky Stacy Ferguson. Also in the mix as a series regular was a young Mario Lopez, who played the drummer of the group, and he was always a dancer as well. So, Will, I gotta ask you this. When did you first become aware of Kids Incorporated?
I've known of Kids Incorporated since it was on. I knew of its existence. I knew nothing about what it actually was. Like from drips and drabs I had assembled over the decades, if you asked me today, I would say I always thought Kids Incorporated was the Mickey Mouse Club's Wario. like it was basically like we've got Mickey Mouse Club at home. Even though they were kind of contemporaries for quite a bit, they shared the same network. It was almost like the Lou Pearlman thing of he created his own competition. Like in my mind, they were essentially the same thing, but like Kids Incorporated was kind of like store brand, while like Mickey Mouse Club was name brand, But like, here's one of like Will's anecdotal tangents. Now, I've said before, like I went to this private school from middle school, and there was a kid there named Reggie Harris. Reggie was a quote unquote actor. And over the summers, he would like go to Hollywood and film things. And it was always school lore that Reggie was on Kids Incorporated. But like I never had cable, so I couldn't verify this. But I just grew up like, oh yeah, that's Reggie. He's off at Kids Incorporated. And it kind of made me understand, like, I don't know if you realize, like a lot of like influencer kids these days are homeschooled because they get bullied in like real school. And it was kind of that there. Like, we didn't bully Reggie, but we really didn't like him very much. So it's like growing up over time, and since I found the internet, I have tried to find Reggie Harris clips on Kids Incorporated, and the internet doesn't know who he is. So now I'm in this like Lifetime TV movie of, was he ever an actor? Was he ever going to California? Because kids were just playing along like, oh yeah, Reggie's in Kids Incorporated. But were they seeing him? Was he paying them to say? So like this whole thing of like researching this show, it opened up that wound of like, let's try to track down Reggie Harris. Nothing.
I have not seen him listed in the cast unless he was a backup dancer.
I Googled extensive cast lists because a lot of them don't even get as deep as like Love Hewitt. You know, they really just focus on that core original cast.
Oh.
They don't recognize the evolution. So it's just kind of like, did it ever happen? That's my next life mystery. So that's my relationship with Kids Incorporated. But how about you?
Oh, that's crazy. Yeah. Well, it was definitely through 1986, 1987, a Disney Channel preview week, because I just remember it was in the era where Ryan was on the show and I thought he was the coolest kid in the world. He's playing guitar on stage. There's a full lighting rig. He's got spiky hair and a denim jacket. That is how you be cool. That was the epitome of it all for me. And then I was always just counting the months till the next preview week, because either I never put up enough of a stink or my parents just didn't think it was necessary to have the Disney Channel. So I would just be waiting, to watch the show again. Or I'd go to a friend's house and say like, we got to watch Kids Incorporated. They're like, oh, nobody likes Kids Incorporated. I was like, I like it. Let's watch it, So that was definitely for me, like seeing it. And then it was always a special event because I'd have a week of being able to watch it. Then I'd have to wait, 6 months or whatever the next preview week was going to happen. So that's where I was first getting my taste of it and loving it.
Well, as the series went on, different cast members would come and go. For example, season 2 on the Disney Channel introduced Ryan Lambert, best known these days for his role of Rudy in 80s cult classic The Monster Squad, as the new lead guitarist and singer after Jerry Sherrill left the show to pursue a solo music career. By season 4 in 1987, Martika had left to do the same, but found much more success, even earning a legitimate #1 hit single, Toy Soldiers. Martika was replaced with an elementary school-age girl named Connie Lou, who was a foot shorter than her co-stars, but had a powerful voice. By this point, Mario Lopez had also left the series to pursue sitcom television roles, which led him to Saved by the Bell a few years later. By season 5 in 1988, both Renee and the kid had moved on from the series, which opened the door in 1989 to a young actress named Love Hewitt, later known as Jennifer Love Hewitt. The series went on hiatus for 1990, and by the time the show returned in 1991, Stacey Ferguson, who had been on the show for 6 seasons, had finally moved on, eventually reuniting with her Kids Incorporated co-star Renee to form Wild Orchid in the late 90s and finding superstardom beyond that as a member of the Black Eyed Peas and as a solo pop artist. With Stacey's departure, there were now no original cast members on the series, and cast changes were a regular occurrence as the series continued production into 1993, the final season in which Anthony Harrell, future cast member of Saved by the Bell, the new class, joined the cast. Disney halted production, and I bet they did, going into 1994, and for the next 2 years, just aired reruns before deciding not to renew the license, closing the curtain on the series for good. Adam, how long were you tuning into the show? And did you ever experience this final season?
Well, like I say, because of those preview weeks, it was always like sometimes it would be a year if I didn't catch the next one coming up. So I would say I remember seeing this girl named Love Hewitt show up on the series, and I was like, huh. And then when I came back, I was like, wait a minute. This Love Hewitt girl's here, but Stacy's gone. She'd been the constant for all those years. Where's Stacy? So I dropped off after that. But then what happened was I bought this used VHS tape, this X rental from this media store called The Warehouse in like 1993. And it's this tape called Kids Incorporated The Beginning. And it blew my mind because it was the pilot episode, which I had never seen. It was re-edited to include the kid as a kind of like narrator who himself was dreaming of joining the group just like me, so it was my first introduction to this Mickey character because he was only on the first season, so I didn't know anything about him, and I watched that tape like endlessly. It's my definitive version of the series. Like they had all those years after, and then I watched intermittently, but when I go to that tape, I'm like, it's so punk rock in its production values. It's got like the best storyline in my opinion because it's about these kids competing. It's kind of like a battle of the bands to see who will perform at the place. There was just so many awesome things about it, including just the performances, which we'll get into in a minute. But like, I wish I still had that tape. I have no idea what happened to it. That thing is worth some bucks now. It just does not come up for sale anymore. But for me, it's more sentimental value. But anyway, so I definitely missed out on those final seasons, but I remember like, yeah, just seeing where the show was going. And I was just like, nope, I'm going back to the beginning. And this is the most pure form of Kids Incorporated. Well, we got to take a look at this series, which, as you're saying, you really were not familiar with. You don't have a ton of nostalgia for. I'm very curious to find out what you could possibly praise about Kids Incorporated. So let's get into our cheers. What do you think, Will?
It was very of its era.
Fair enough. All right, here I go. So here's what I feel about the series is you are someone about singing, you know how it goes. I feel like these kids could actually sing. It wasn't just a cute kids on stage situation. Like Martika, for example, is an amazing vocalist for her age. Like from the beginning, no matter what song they gave her to perform, like on that tape when I was watching, she's singing Pat Benatar and she's killing it. But then like she's singing any other artist and she's giving it her own flair. Like it's out of this world, her voice. I love what she does with that. But same with Rasan, like he had just such a strong vocal style for such a young kid. Because like I think she was like 12 or something when the series started. But for him, like his voice even changes throughout the series, and he's still got a great voice even when that happens. He does this song "You're So Shy" on the beginning tape, and that's just a real standout performance to me. But then like, again, with the longest running cast member, Stacy, her voice had a maturity to it that was really beyond her years, because I think she had to have been 6 or 7 when that pilot was filmed. Like she's tiny, she's missing teeth, Renee had like a very pure sound. It was always just delivered very well. Even this little Connie Lou girl, my mind couldn't handle whenever she was like belting out a song. I'm like, she's so tiny. How is this giant voice coming out of her? And it's so like even. And later, like when Mario Lopez leaves, they get a new drummer, but he's also like a main cast member now. His name's Richie. And he has like a really impressive voice that he's got like ears that stick out. He just looks really goofy, but he's kind of like Rick Astley, he's just like, where's his voice coming out of this little skinny kid, I will say this, like sadly, Ryan, who is my childhood favorite, is the weak link. Like he's not a great singer. He had the look and he had the attitude, but he unfortunately could not compare to anybody else in the cast. And overall, they had the talent for those first 5 seasons. They really did a great job there. So what do you think about the singing, Will?
There's this joke of how like 80s hot is 90s ugly. This is very 80s. And what I like about it, and this is going to be such a backhand compliment, they all seem approachable. Like the Mickey Mouse Club, those kids seem like they were going to be the cool kids in school, things like that. Renee was clearly not the cool kid in school because Renee was my crush from Wild Orchid, which is why I was actually surprised to find find out that Renee is older than Stacy. Because once you get to Wild Orchid, it doesn't seem that way. I don't know if Stacy had some miles on her or lived a hard life. Like, I really thought Renee was younger, but like doing research, Renee was older than Stacy. And I refuse to call her Fergie here because Fergie hadn't arrived on the scene yet. This is merely Fergie's origin story before her parents were gunned down behind the place, you know? But like, I mean, the singing is good and they're talented kids, and I could see this being kind of like a prototypical kids bop. We'll get into that when we get to like Jeers, but like they're good at what they do if what they do is what you're looking for.
There you go. Yeah, definitely. And that's the thing. I think to your point, I like that the kids seem real to a point, like based on what they had to work with. They actually have some attitude. It's not like squeaky clean Disney. It's not like boring nice kid syndrome from this era, because they get snarky. They make fun of each other. They have arguments, or make jokes, and they have to make up sometimes when they hurt each other's feelings. So they feel very genuine. I'm not saying they're great actors, but they feel like genuine kids to a certain point. I do want to point out, though, like the costumes on this show, again, very 80s, but if you just think about how many episodes they were doing, and they had to have a new look for every stage show, then the musical numbers in between, they're like the fantasy sequences or whatever, like they really captured the fashion trends of the day to where it is a time capsule. It's the all denim look, or it's new wave fashion, or so many sequined vests, you know, like.
Well, like, I don't know which versions you watched, but like the ones I watched on YouTube still had the ads intact, and like Sears was a sponsor. They were a live action catalog, you know, like that. It was like a synergistic relationship, basically.
And I'll say also the choreography for the era is not bad either. Not the onstage performances, they're just like jumping around. Like there's nothing going on there, but like the choreographed dance sequences that look like they come out of a musical or something are pretty good for the kids performing it. But the truth of the matter is, the strength of this show, we're saying they had the voices for kids. They were great singers. They're great performers. But I still, to this day, can't believe all the songs that they were able to license for this show. It is insane when you think about it. It's why I can't believe also they're able to be on YouTube to this day, because there's no physical media release except for a few VHS tapes. But like, how have they done that?
I thought the same thing. And like, again, backhanded compliment where it's like, it looks like it was created by PBS. It's very like Sesame Street by way of Degrassi. So you know the budget went into the song licenses. And there's an official channel. It's not like these are fan rips. Like, it actually kind of angered me that there are crystal clear copies of these episodes on YouTube where we watched, what was it, Learning the Ropes, like we were looking through somebody's Venetian blinds. You know, like, it's just, who was preserving this show? But there was a lot of money pumped into the music for this show.
I'm just going to go through a list here just real quick. It's not every song ever, because that's a lot of songs. But just to give you an example of stuff, you'd be like, they got that? They got that? So how about Billie Jean, Wanna Be Starting Something by Michael Jackson, Holiday, Dress You Up by Madonna, Karma Chameleon and Tumble For You by Culture Club, We Built This City by Starship. It was the 80s after all. Walk Like an Egyptian, Manic Monday by the Bangles, Living on a Prayer by Bon Jovi, I Want to Dance with Somebody by Whitney Houston. But even like movie soundtrack songs, they did like The Neverending Story, Goonies Are Good Enough by Cyndi Lauper. This one, Bit by Bit, the theme from Fletch. Huh? Why was that licensed? I don't understand. But what I like about it too, though, this wasn't just karaoke. It wasn't like they just took like the original tracks, like they somehow got access to them and then the kids are singing over. They had all new original arrangements that were recorded, the instrumentals for the kids, and it fit the kids' vocal ranges. They sometimes were changing up little things here or there. So it gave familiar songs a fresh sound, which I appreciate. And a lot of these songs I only knew from Kids Incorporated. Like, I know the Kids Incorporated version better than the original. It's kind of like the Weird Al syndrome, you know?
Amish paradise. But no, you're so right. I mean, there were some big gets there. Just the Michael Jackson stuff. Like, I don't know if people realize, like, my friend Brock and I were talking about this just last week, where if you ever got those compilations like Mystic Music presents Cool Rock, you never got Madonna. You never got Michael Jackson. Like, those were hard to get. The sheer fact, right now, Deadpool and Wolverine, there's like a separate EP of different mixes of Like a Prayer just for Madonna to monetize that outside of the official soundtrack, you know? So the fact that they pumped money to get these songs, that didn't happen. That doesn't happen now.
I assume it was just the power of Disney. That has to be a big part of it too, even though it's like they had a lot of different production companies that produced the show over the years, which is weird. I don't know how that worked, that it kept like changing hands or whatever, but like I'm sure the Disney influence also had something to do with that.
See, I don't know because this is not Disney's golden age. It's more about this is the era. Like, there are probably some weird contracts that don't apply any longer, hence how they're able to be on YouTube. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
nobody thought about this stuff in perpetuity. And like Disney right now, like especially when the thing get taken on in season 2, has no power. Like Eisner isn't even in yet. You know? Like Eisner's got to come in and build Disney back. So I don't think that's it. I think somebody just had like a cousin, like licensing was just a lot cheaper, something like that, you know?
Yeah, and it could just also be because of the MTV era. They're like, cable TV, it's gonna be on weekly, daily, you know, like, and our song is getting a push to a younger demographic that is maybe listening on the radio all the time. So that's gonna like build up a new fan base for this particular artist or whatever. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of factors that probably played into that. But Will, it's not all bright lights and sequins sparkling. Oh no. There are things about this show, you know, it's of its era, as we said. And we're going to get into it here with our jeers.
Boo! Boo! Boo!
Having finally seen it after all this time, what was your reaction?
The show is perfect if you've ever wanted to hear the hits of the day sung by children, and that's no one. At this point in time, no one wanted that. And we were talking about how like they're great singers, but not the best actors. Like that's an understatement. You know how 80s family sitcoms always had the one kid who couldn't act? It's usually like maybe it's that kid they aged up in season 6, something like that. Like they're cute, but they just aren't great actors. This show is a cast of Tina Yothers. Like that's there's no chemistry between them. They're clearly reciting memorized lines instead of communicating. It's like, I said my line, I stopped. I say my line, I stop. You say your line, time for me to speak again. They don't flow. Like you watch a show like Saved by the Bell, and it's like that wasn't even great acting, but like they were better because they understood the assignment. They were supposed to be friends. I don't understand this universe where like they're all kind of friends and or related, but then they put on performances at this teen speakeasy, which is ultimately what it is. Growing up, there are people I'd come in contact with who would say, like, I hate musicals. And I never understood that because I feel when done well, musical theater has organic transitions into song. This show does not have organic transitions. They will just start singing. And it doesn't always serve the plot. It's really just like, hey, we paid for this Bangles song and we're going to sing this Bangles song. You know, like, I didn't like it. And I want to say, I would have hated this show in its original airing because I wasn't that person then. Like I always said, I'm Benjamin Buttoning. Like when I was like 4 and 5, I was a 50-year-old woman. I watched Murder, She Wrote in 60 minutes. I have no affinity for Thundercats or Motu or any of those like kids things that our generation loves. But by the time this show ended, it should have been my cup of tea. And I feel like Mickey Mouse Club is better because it had the comedy and those kids are charismatic. Like, say what you will about Justin Timberlake and Ryan Gosling. You can go back to them as tweens and say, those kids are going places. I didn't feel that way about anyone on this show, especially Martika, because I didn't realize this was Martika. I already have this like irrational hatred of mononym celebrities, and I knew Martika from those commercials. Like I said, Mystic Music presents Cool Rock, like Toy Soldiers. I know that little clip because it's the song on the compilation. And growing up, I'm like, oh, Martika. It's really nice that her talent helped her escape some Eastern Bloc country. When no, she's the child of Cuban immigrants, and her name is Marta Marrero, which is a much better name than Martika. Like, I'm just kind of like, I have so many issues with this show. So I'm going to step back because I've said my piece. But no. One last thing. It is fitting to me that no talent Anthony Harrell got this show canceled.
Oh man.
Prosecution rests.
Yeah, I mean the children of the 80s are coming after you with pitchforks, Will. No, but like here's the thing. I agree. If you don't have nostalgia for the show, if it did not hit you when you didn't know any better, like that pop music was a thing and could be performed, that's definitely where I'm coming in. You know, I was seeing it as a 5 or 6-year-old, you know, like where I'm just like, oh, these kids, everybody loves them. Everybody's clapping for them. They're so great. When you look at it though, the writing it's almost non-existent. It is terrible. Like the acting aside, they also didn't have anything to work with because no character has a hook that makes you realize what they are about. They have no defining trait, no catchphrase, no nothing. They're interchangeable based on what the story is going to be about that week. So it's like, is Stacy got a crush on a boy? Or does Gloria have a crush on a boy? Or is one of them going to win a contest and everybody else is jealous? Or whatever it's going to be. Like, it's just, it never matters. And of course, there's also no ongoing narrative or character progression. Even for the kids who are on the show for like 6 years, it doesn't matter. It's just like, we got to get to the next song. But here's like 5 minutes of a conversation. It's mostly kids just like yelling over each other and like, or the stunted, delivery of some lines, like you said. But yeah, just the show itself is just so terribly conceived, even though it's glossy and it's very well, like presented, but like in the conception of what it's about, you can't ever get excited. Now, here's what I'll say. Because I have the nostalgia for the 80s era, I think that is at least like there's something there. By the time the 90s rolled around, music had changed a lot. And I will say specifically, like even going back now, I don't recognize hardly any of the songs that they were singing. Where all like the firepower was in like the top 40 hits of the 80s for the first 5 seasons. By the time they get to those last few, they're doing terrible renditions of New Kids on the Block Step by Step. That's sung by kids, and these kids can't sing it. It is bad. It's like, oh, you realize how important the harmonies for Step by Step and just New Kids in general really were. They do a version of Technotronic's Pump Up the Jam or MC Hammer's You Can't Touch This, but it's a group of mostly white kids singing these R&B like ballads or rap songs, and it doesn't work. Like, and the vocal arrangements also in the 90s were not as good. They weren't as creative as they had been in the 80s, where they were putting their own spin on it. And ultimately, the nadir of the series, Anthony Harrell aside, just in general, the quality of the cast really dipped. Vocal ability, charisma, there's just nothing. They're just like filling spaces in their cast list by the end. Even Jennifer Love Hewitt had an okay voice, I guess, but she's not great. So, I mean, she's in an episode where she's getting bullied and then Billy Blanks shows up to teach her martial arts. And I'm like, what is this? And it's such a nothing episode. It's called The Karate Kid, but guess what's not in there? Any song from a Karate Kid soundtrack.
I think a lot of the problem, though, is like, it's unfair to me, like, to heap on this blame on the kids. I think it's the production side, because I did a little research on, like, it was created by Thomas W. Lynch, who is basically the mirror universe Dan Schneider. Say what you will about Dan Schneider and his personal life and the allegations. He carried Nickelodeon through the aughts. It can't be argued. But Thomas Lynch is the opposite. He has stayed steadily employed for 40 years, but everything he has made has been a footnote. It has been a kernel of a good idea that somebody else improved upon, like Kids Bop. You could get cute kids singing the hits of the day. At least the Kids Bop kids have charisma. I've had to watch those videos, but it's kind of like his filmography is just an always the bridesmaid, never the bride. So I'm really heaping the blame on him because a lot of these kids did go on to things, whether they were in the public domain Universal Monsters Goonies movie or whether they were AC Slater or they dated every hot guy in Hollywood in 99, 2000. They all have their story, but this show has no real legacy, and I'm putting it on Thomas W. Lynch.
Like, you would think with even Saved by the Bell as a template, they would have changed it at a certain point and like tweaked it and given it a new direction, but still kept the song elements. Even just copied. I mean, truthfully, by the time California Dreams came around, the show was already dead. But I would think that they would have, found some way to give it a new life. But I also think being on cable TV, you don't have to work that hard. If it was a network show where they're trying not to get canceled, like I think on cable, it was just Disney Channel's like, we need to fill time on our channel, so like, let's just keep Kids Incorporated. It's always been here. Let's just keep it going until they're just like, it's not worth it anymore, So I think there's a lot going on there. They didn't have a lot to work with, so maybe we need to find a new direction for them as the show doctors. I want to mention, to your point, Will, like, it does feel like that mantle of kids singing pop hits for a kid audience was officially inherited by Kids Bop, improved upon by all these Kids Bop albums over the last 20 odd years. But then you got to think about it too. The concept of a popular TV show where young people sing hits of the day was really overtaken by like the reality TV competition shows. It's American Idol, it's The Voice, nowadays The Masked Singer, which is not kids, but I'm saying like just the singing, we want to see these popular songs being sung by not the artists, Even incorporating hit songs into a narrative story was done better by Glee, at least the first season, from what I hear. So a reboot of Kids Incorporated, I think, is a tough sell in this day and age. Now, I thought about the Disney Channel because for a while there, they were producing all the young teen singing sensations, but also, you tell me if I'm wrong, that era kind of seems to be over for them because it seems like all their child stars that grew up to be teen sensations then got hooked on drugs or became party animals or whatever, and the legacy dwindled away. But you tell me.
I kind of feel like it's coming back around because I don't know if you know this, but like this was just like 2 weeks ago at D23. Miley was the youngest recipient of the Disney Legend Award. Like, they have pretty much expunged her record of all of her ne'er-do-well period, and it's like, we're welcoming you back, Miley. So it's one of those things of, I think they kind of want to get back in that business because they had a couple of false starts. I mean, when they let Zendaya go, it was kind of like, oh, we fumbled the bag. And it's been a hard road since then. But like keeping the Descendants going, keeping Zombies going, kind of like creating those stars, but starting younger, because if they start them older, then they end up on Freeform and they lose them. So I think we could be getting back there, but I don't know. I don't want to get into my thing until you are you saying you don't think it can be done? Or...
Well, see, that was ultimately where I fell, but I'm also not as connected to the modern day Nickelodeon, Disney Channel universe. So I was trying to take it in a direction that I thought would get kids' attention and also just maybe be cool enough that adults would be into it as well, because I want to borrow an idea from another musical series of the 80s, which was Kid Video. That is another show that was like partly live action, partly animated, mostly animated, and it incorporated hit songs of the day into the animated adventures of this band, right? So What I'm thinking Kids Incorporated is now is it would be an anime style action series where Kids Incorporated, they're a band. They get pulled into a world where music has the ability to give you superpowers, but there's this oppressive dictator. He outlawed music decades prior because he's keeping all the power of music for himself. He's like a megalomaniacal, like record producer, kind of character. And as a result, like the children of this realm don't know about the power within them, right? So Kids Incorporated arrives, they through whatever machinations, they pass through this portal, they get sucked in, whatever happens, right? And they instantly start displaying their powers when they sing or they're playing instruments, and they're like holding their own in battle against the army of this dictator. It's trying to shut him down. This harassing these kind of Lost Boys-esque street children that are living out there. And the band somehow unintentionally become leaders of this group of musically superpowered rebels who they mentor into creating original music and tap into the power of their individual sounds. Now, each episode then has the ability to feature popular songs that then manifest powers in different ways, right? So you kind of build on that. There'll probably be some actual pop stars in the cast, and maybe, a few who are just making cameos as well. Probably it would make it more than a season. I totally get that, but I think it would be a fun experiment. Like people would just be like, this is Kids Incorporated? It is now.
Adam, this is a first for our show, and it's very special for episode 20 because you just described The Night Begins to Shine.
What is this?
You have homework for this weekend because any Teen Titans Go fan listening to this show is like, Adam just stole The Night Begins to Shine. On Teen Titans Go, which is, we're not going to call it a spinoff of Teen Titans, but it is a very popular, long-running Cartoon Network show. It's a saga now because it starts around like season 3, but Cyborg is obsessed with this song called The Night Begins to Shine, which is by a band called BER. And we just hear the song in passing. We hear a clip of it, but it's his like pump-up song. Like when he really wants to get like ready or excited for a fight, he plays The Night Begins to Shine. And it was like a clip that was recorded by just like session musicians for the show. But over the course of the series, it takes on this mythology where we eventually get The Night Begins to Shine, which is a 5-part special where Cyborg is pulled into this fantasy world where music has been outlawed by an oppressive dictator. The music gives him powers, like it gives him like manga-esque armor. So like they get redesigns. I have the Funko Pops of The Night Begins to Shine behind me. It's this whole, so then they have to track down the members of BER and bring them into that world so they can write a new song to take down the dictator and empower the people in this universe. It even spawned a sequel to the point where Warner Brothers greenlit A Night Begins to Shine series, but it was right before the Discovery merger, so we think it's been killed. Like there's been no news on it, but like this was about to be a franchise parallel to Teen Titans Go, and it's the exact story you just like almost beat by.
That is crazy. Now, here's what I'm going to say. Because I do now recall my kids watching seasons of Teen Titans Go in the car and that song playing. Now, I wasn't watching the episode, but I'm sure because I heard it 50 times, I was somehow like absorbing the story and subconsciously.
It has the pop stars of the day because in the special they bring in Fall Out Boy and then they bring in CeeLo Green who turns into a bear because I got the Funko Pop of the CeeLo bear. Like I was really into Teen Titans Go like before COVID. So like, yes, they've done the whole like we bring in current pop stars. You gotta go watch it. But like then my take on it, I think of it two ways of like how I would have kept it going then, but also what I would do now. The format was wrong back then. I mean, I get it. At that point, it was felt as passe and outdated and it skewed older, but Kids Incorporated should have been a variety show. It should have been a Sonny and Cher-esque variety show. Maybe a little skit, not something drawn out. For all I care, it could be kids doing knock-knock jokes, but they would be charismatic kids. Just little interstitials for the music. We know at the end of the day, people were there for the music. And every now and then, Hollywood dips his toe into those waters, but it's afraid to commit. Like, they will give people a one-off special. Wayne Brady got like 3 specials before they were like, let's just put him on, let's make a deal. But like, it's a viable format because there's that anecdote of Angela Lansbury used to hire her contemporaries for guest spots on Murder, She Wrote, because that work gave them the hours they needed to keep their SAG health insurance. And it's the same deal of like variety shows kept a certain level of celebrity employed. You know, you're like Nipsey Russells, your Rip Torns, your Paul Lynns, you know, like these guys, all they had were game shows and variety shows. So it's like you could do that in the early 90s. You could have former head of the class, maybe Rain Pryor, where it's like you weren't really that great on head of the class, but you are Richard Pryor's daughter, so we gotta kind of respect you. One of those deals, you know? It should have been a variety show. Would it have lasted as long? No. But I feel like you said its strength was the first 5 seasons. Once music start to change and they started leaning more on original songs, I think you retool it into the variety show. Now, present day, I think you could have a Mickey Mouse Club-esque Kids Incorporated, because I've told you, like, I feel that's the show that did what they did better. And I'm also surprised they haven't tried it again. You know, the fact that like it was such a breeding ground of talent that exploded at the turn of the century that no one at Disney is like, you know, we need to start that again. Just as like an investment, some of those kids will go on to star in like Zombies 12 or like the reboot of High School Musical. Like, you need that farm team that I don't think Disney has right now. And as far as like, I think kids would be into it under a certain age. It's like once they discover YouTube and influencers, it's over. But we keep bringing up Kids Bop. Kids Bop goes on tour and they tour successfully. And they also phase out the kids. They menudo them once they're no longer cute and young. And it's a viable property. So I don't know why we don't have a Kids Bop show, which would essentially be Kids Incorporated. They could buy Kids Bop. And then Kids is an acronym. So Kids Incorporated Disney Studios. Well, it's not studio because it's with a Z. But Kids Incorporated Disney. Bop. You know?
Well, you just gave them $1 million idea.
Watch me turn up Mysteriously Murdered.
Oh, well, I mean, they're going to come after me too, the WB, for trying to steal their idea. But this has been really interesting. I think bottom line, yeah, when we just look at it, it was a nostalgia property, but maybe there is still some legs in the format. If they did it right, they gave it the proper production values, they gave it the right format and everything like that. But here's the thing, Will, this conversation, I think, going to bring a lot of people out of the woodwork. I'm curious to see the comments, but here's the thing.
I'm going to send it directly to Fergie.
Well, next time around, we're going to be talking about a show that I promise you no one has an opinion on, and no one is going to be upset about, but they are going to be fascinated by, because we are going to talk about a brief moment in the early 90s when a visitor from another country came to the shores of the United States, tried to take children's television by storm. She had 4 letters in her name. 4 letters which will live in infamy. We are talking about Shusha. What is Shusha? Do you remember?
It's unbelievable.
You may not remember Shusha, but I tell you, you will remember it after we talk about it next time around. I have a lot to say about this. Will, I know, has a big reaction to this whole concept. It was his idea. I couldn't believe it. That anybody else on the planet remembers Shusha. So we are going to get into that. Look it up, XUXA, if you want to get some information ahead of time.
They are out there. I wrote about Shusha over a decade ago, and that is a steady performer. That's one of my most visited posts. So there are 12 people out there, and hopefully they listen to this show.
Speaking of which, Will, if people want to find that article and all your other writing, where can they find you?
I am at westweekever.com. Every week, every Friday, we do West Week Ever Pop Culture in Review, where we look at the week that was in popular culture. Or you can find me on social media at William B. West.
Awesome. And you can find everything I'm doing at geekster.com, the home of, remember that show? But also a lot of other shows, one of which is called the Geekster Geek Out podcast. And recently, William Bruce West was a guest with me on that. So if you want to get his take on boy bands, we touched on it very briefly in this episode, but that is William Bruce West's sweet spot. When it comes to pop music, he knows all about it, guys. And we get into it. We dive deep into that whole universe. So if you are curious, definitely check out. About the time this episode is dropping, you're going to see the Geekster Geek Out podcast with William Bruce West as the guest. So find that, but you can also find me on social media at Hoju Coolander. But hey, until next time, we're changing the channel.
This has been a presentation of Geekster Media.